An Apache girl waited years for her tribe who never returned until a rancher changed everything. The morning began like many others in the Apache camp. The sun was soft, rising slowly over the wide land, painting the sky with pale gold. Smoke curled gently from cooking fires. Horses shifted and snorted, and voices moved through the air like a low song. A girl sat near her family's shelter, wrapped in a thin blanket, watching everything with tired eyes. She had been sick for days. Her body felt weak, and her head often spun when she stood. Because of this, her mother knelt beside her and brushed her hair back gently, telling her she would need to stay behind for a short while. The tribe was leaving to follow familiar paths, but they would return soon. They always did. "You will be safe," her mother said quietly. "We will come back before the moon changes." She trusted those words. Trust came easily to her then. An older woman, her aunt by blood and care, was chosen to stay with her. The aunt moved slowly and spoke little, but her presence felt steady, like a tree that had seen many seasons. Together they watched the camp prepare to move. The girl noticed small details that morning, though she did not know why. The way her brother avoided looking at her, the way her father placed his hand on her shoulder for longer than usual, the way her mother turned back again and again as she walked away, as if something inside her resisted leaving. By midday the camp was empty. Only the wind remained, whispering through the grass and the trees. The girl waited. At first, waiting felt easy. She rested, slept, and listened to stories from her aunt. They cooked simple meals and sat outside at night, watching the stars. Each day, the girl believed the next sunrise would bring the familiar sound of returning voices. But days passed. The sickness slowly left her body, yet no one came. The aunt grew quieter. She walked shorter distances, sat longer by the fire, and stared often toward the horizon. The girl asked when the tribe would return. The aunt answered with soft words and gentle smiles, never giving a clear time. Weeks turned into months. One morning, the girl woke and found the fire cold. The aunt lay still, her breathing shallow and weak. The girl tried to help, bringing water and shade, but the older woman did not recover. By the time the sun reached its highest point, the girl was alone. She did not cry at first. She did not fully understand what being alone meant. She waited. Every day, she returned to the same spot where the tribe had disappeared. She watched the distance until her eyes hurt. She listened for hoofbeats, laughter, any sound that might mean home was coming back. Nothing ever did. As seasons changed, the truth began to settle into her heart like a heavy stone. The waiting was no longer about hours or days. It became something deeper, something that stayed even when she slept. She learned to survive because she had no other choice. She remembered what she had been taught as a child. Which plants could be eaten, how to follow small animal tracks, how to gather water without wasting it. Some days she succeeded. Other days she went hungry, lying still to save strength. The land became her teacher. When the wind changed, she learned what it meant. When the sky darkened, she learned where to hide. When the nights grew cold, she learned how to use fire carefully, never letting it grow too large. Still, she waited. It would be dark than the old camp, as if her family might return at any moment. She spoke to the empty space, telling stories, repeating memories aloud so they would not disappear. Days sometimes travelers passed far away. She saw signs of them but stayed hidden. Fear lived inside her now, not loud, but constant. She did not know who could be trusted anymore. Years moved quietly over her. The girl grew taller. Her voice changed. Her hands became strong and sure. The child who once trusted promises slowly turned into someone who trusted only the land and her own instincts. Yet, one thing never changed. Every evening, just before the sun disappeared, she stood facing the direction her tribe had gone. No matter how tired she was, no matter how hard the day had been, she stood there and waited. Because hope, once planted, does not leave easily. She told herself that maybe they had been delayed. Maybe they were forced to take another path. Maybe one day they would come back and find her waiting, just as she promised. The land grew quiet around her, but she remained, waiting. There were no longer clear lines between one day and the next. Time became something she felt in her body instead, in the length of her hair, in the strength of her arms, in the way her thoughts grew quieter and deeper. The girl who had waited for her tribe slowly faded into someone shaped by the land itself. She woke each morning before the sun, not because she planned to, but because her body had learned to listen. Birds, wind, temperature, everything spoke if one paid attention. She moved carefully, always alert, always aware that one mistake could cost her comfort, or worse, survival. Food was never certain. Some days the land was generous. Other days it tested her patience. She learned which roots were safe and which berries gave strength. She learned how to store small amounts of food for dry days. When the rain came, she collected water using hollowed stones and woven leaves. When the ground cracked from heat, she followed memory and instinct to shaded places her elders once showed her. At night, loneliness pressed harder than hunger. The stars felt closer now. She spoke to them sometimes, quietly, as if they might answer. She repeated names she feared forgetting.
Her mother, her father,
Her brother, her aunt. She spoke their names slowly, carefully, so they would remain real. In those dreams she ran across open land, laughing, calling out, only to wake with her heart pounding and the silence waiting for her. Each time the disappointment hurt less than before, not because she felt less, but because her heart had learned how to protect itself. She was cautious of everything unfamiliar. Once she found footprints near the water source she used.
They were not hers. She froze, studying them for a long time.
Fear rose inside her like a warning. She changed her path that day and did not return for many mornings. From then on, she stayed hidden whenever she sensed others nearby. She knew there were people moving across the land now. Sometimes she saw smoke in the distance that did not belong to her fire. Sometimes she heard sounds that did not match the wind or animals. She stayed away, watching from far places, unseen. Trust was something she no longer gave easily. As seasons passed, her body grew strong, but her heart carried quiet weight. She no longer waited in one place. Waiting had changed shape. It lived inside her, moving wherever she went. Still, part of her believed. She kept small traditions alive. It greeted the morning sun the way her people once did. She cleaned her living space carefully, respecting the land. She spoke words taught by elders, even when no one else could hear them. These small acts made her feel less alone. One winter came harder than the others. The cold stayed longer, biting deeper. Boo, food was scarce. Her hands cracked and her feet ached. Some nights she wrapped herself tightly and barely slept, listening to the sounds of the dark. There were moments when she wondered if the waiting would ever end. Not because she wanted to give up, but because she did not know what she was waiting for anymore. The return of her tribe felt distant, like a story told long ago, yet letting go felt like losing them all over again. So she survived. She adjusted.
She adapted. A land shaped her into someone quiet and capable.
Someone who could walk for hours without tiring. Someone who could sense change before it arrived. Someone who knew when to move and when to stay still. Her reflection in the water showed a young woman now, not a child. Her eyes carried knowledge. Her face showed calm strength. She belonged to the land in a way that could not be taught, only earned through time and patience. One day while gathering near a ridge, she noticed something different. The land felt unsettled. Birds lifted suddenly. The wind shifted. The ground carried a faint vibration that did not belong to nature alone. She crouched low, scanning the distance. Far away, she saw movement she did not recognize. Not animals. People. She retreated without sound, heart steady but alert. From that day on, she noticed more signs. Cut branches, paths pressed into the earth, unfamiliar smells carried by the wind. The world around her was changing. She understood then that even if her tribe returned, the land they once knew would not be the same. This thought stayed with her, quiet but heavy. Still, she did not leave. This was where her story had paused, and she refused to abandon it. She waited, not with helpless hope anymore, but with quiet strength. Waiting had become a choice, not a weakness. It was something she carried with dignity. Each evening, as the sun lowered, she stood in her usual place, the same direction, the same silence. She did not cry. She did not beg the sky. She simply stood, rooted, like the trees around her, shaped by time, holding space for what once was, and for what might still come. Because even when life takes everything familiar away, the heart finds ways to remain open. And somewhere beyond the land she knew, change was slowly moving toward her, though she could not yet see it. When you're ready, send part 3, and I'll continue the story in the same simple, engaging style. She stood on a rocky rise as the morning light spread across the land. The air was still, the kind of stillness that made every sound feel louder. As she scanned the distance, a thin line rose into the sky far away. It was faint, pale, and steady. Not the kind of smoke made by lightning or dry brush. This smoke was careful, controlled, human. Her body reacted before her thoughts did. She stepped back into the shadows, lowering herself behind stone and brush. Her heart did not race the way it once might have. Instead, it slowed, focused. Years alone had taught her this kind of calm. She watched. The smoke appeared again the next day, and the day after that, always from the same general direction. Always rising in a way that suggested routine. Whoever was there was not passing through. They were staying. She changed her habits without thinking about it. She gathered food earlier in the morning and returned before the sun grew high. She moved her water collection spots. She erased signs of her presence the way she always had, brushing away footprints, scattering ash, blending into the land. Still, curiosity crept in.
She had seen people before from a distance.
Small groups moving quickly, never staying long, but this was different. This presence felt settled, predictable. After many days, she followed the smoke. She moved carefully, keeping the wind in her favor, stepping where the ground was hard and quiet. She stopped often, listening. The land around her felt altered, not damaged, but shaped by unfamiliar hands. As she got closer, she noticed structures she did not recognize. Wooden shapes standing where there had once been open ground. Animals enclosed within simple boundaries, tools left out in the open. This was not a camp that would disappear overnight. She stayed hidden for a long time. From her place among the trees and rocks, she observed the person who lived there. A man. Older than she was, with slow, deliberate movements, he worked the land patiently, rising with the sun and resting when the heat became heavy. He talked sometimes, though no one answered. His voice carried calm, not anger. He treated the animals gently, never rushing them. These details mattered to her more than she realized. One evening, she noticed him stop suddenly and look toward the hills. Toward her. He knew better than to move. Stillness had saved her many times before. The man stood there for a long moment, shading his eyes, then slowly turned away. He did not come closer. That night, she did not sleep. Her mind was filled with questions she had avoided for years. Should she leave? Could she stay hidden forever? What would happen if he discovered her? Then, one morning, she noticed something new near the edge of her usual path. A bundle placed carefully on a flat stone. Inside were dried food items. Clean. Fresh. Her breath caught. I would be so happy. She did not touch it. She circled the area, checking for signs. None. Whoever left it had done so quietly, respectfully, as if offering, not demanding. She returned at night and found the bundle still there. Hunger made the choice for her. She took the food and left behind a small object in return, a woven cord she had made by hand. It was simple, but it carried meaning. The next day the bundle appeared again. This became a pattern. Neither of them spoke. Neither of them stepped fully into the open. It was a conversation without words, built on patience and respect. Slowly, she allowed herself to come closer. She watched him work, and sometimes he noticed movement at the edge of his sight. He never chased it, never called out loudly, simply continued what he was doing, giving space. One afternoon, their eyes met clearly for the first time. She stood still, half hidden, ready to disappear if needed. The man did not move toward her. He raised one hand slowly, palm open, then lowered it again, a gesture without threat. After a moment, she nodded once and stepped back. It was enough. Over time, distance became less important. Happy, she appeared more often, though never too close. The man left water and food in the same place. Sometimes tools, sometimes cloth. She began to understand some of his words, though the language was not her own. She listened, learning the rhythm of it, the tone. Both speak simply, often repeating phrases. One day she spoke back, just one word, soft. Careful? The man smiled, not wide, not sudden, but gentle, like someone who understood the weight of that moment. From then on, their connection grew slowly. They shared space without forcing it. She helped without being asked, leaving small signs of care around the land. He responded with patience, never pushing, never trying to take more than she offered. He learned her habits, she learned his. Trust did not arrive all at once. It came in pieces.
In silence, in shared understanding.
For the first time in many years, she felt something unfamiliar. Not hope the way she once knew it, but possibility. The waiting she had carried for so long began to loosen its grip. Not because she had forgotten her past, but because something new was forming beside it. And though she did not yet know what this change would bring, she sensed that her story was moving again. Days passed where their paths crossed more naturally. She no longer disappeared the moment she sensed him nearby. Instead, she stayed just long enough to be seen, then moved away at her own pace. The man noticed this change and respected it. He adjusted himself, too, giving her room to decide how close was close enough. Their communication remained simple. He spoke slowly, using the same words often. He pointed to objects and repeated their names. She listened carefully, storing the sounds in her memory. Sometimes she answered using gestures instead of words. Sometimes she used a word from her own language. Neither corrected the other. Learning happened quietly, without pressure. One morning he left a small blanket near the stone where they exchanged items. It was folded neatly, clean, and clearly meant for her. The nights had grown colder, and he must have noticed her thin covering from a distance. She hesitated before taking it. Accepting it felt like stepping across an invisible line. But the cold had been hard lately, and she understood the kindness behind the gesture. She took the blanket and, in return, left behind a carefully carved piece of wood shaped like a bird. It was not perfect, but it was made with care. That night, wrapped in warmth that did not come from fire, she slept more deeply than she had in years. As time moved on, she began helping in small ways. She cleared stones from paths he used often. She guided animals away from places where they might wander too far. That she never announced these acts, she simply did them the way her people once taught, by caring for the land and those who shared it. He noticed. One afternoon he pointed toward the hills and asked something she did not fully understand. She paused, then nodded and gestured for him to follow, at a distance. She showed him where water stayed cool even in dry times, where shade lasted longer during harsh days. These were things the land had taught her slowly, patiently. He listened with attention, not interrupting. The bond between them was not loud or dramatic. It grew like roots underground, unseen but strong. Sometimes they sat in the same space without speaking. The quiet between them felt different now. It no longer pressed in or demanded explanation. It simply existed, calm and steady. One evening, as the sun dipped low, he asked her name. She froze. No one had asked her that in many years. For a moment, she considered staying silent. Names carried history, memory, loss. But they also carried identity. And she realized she wanted him to know who stood beside him. She spoke her name softly. He repeated it carefully, practicing the sound until he got it right. When he smiled, it was not from pride, but from respect. And he shared his own name. It felt strange on her tongue, but she tried again until he nodded in understanding. From that moment, something shifted. They were no longer just two people sharing space. They were two people who knew each other. As weeks passed, she told him pieces of her story. Not all at once, and not with many words. She pointed toward the old camp. She traced paths in the dirt. She spoke names slowly, explaining with gestures what words could not yet carry. He listened quietly, his face serious, his movements gentle. He did not interrupt or question. When she finished, he simply sat with her, letting the weight of her story exist without trying to change it. She realized then that he understood her tribe was not coming back. And, somehow, hearing that truth reflected in his silence helped her accept it too. He never suggested she leave the land. He'd never asked her to move closer to his home. Instead, he made space for her choices. He showed her areas she could use safely. He helped her repair simple tools. He explained how certain objects worked, letting her decide if she wanted to use them. She learned from him, just as he learned from her. The land between them began to feel shared, not owned. For the first time in her life since childhood, she felt something new growing inside her. It was not excitement. It was not relief. It was belonging. Not the kind tied to blood or tribe, but the kind formed through understanding and patience. Some nights, she still stood facing the direction her people had gone. She still spoke their names. She still honored the ways she had been taught. But now, when she turned back, she was no longer alone. The waiting that once defined her life had softened. It no longer felt like standing still. It felt like standing open to you. Change had not erased her past. It had shape now, meaning. A gentle rhythm that did not rush her or leave her behind. She still woke early, still listened to the land, still moved with care. But something inside her had changed. The silence no longer felt heavy. It felt peaceful. She and the man did not suddenly become family, and they did not try to replace what had been lost. What they built was quieter than that. It was made of small choices repeated every day. She chose to stay, not because she had nowhere else to go, but because this land was part of her story. It held her memories, her growth, her survival. Leaving it would feel like leaving herself behind. The man understood this without needing many words. He never asked her to move away from the places she loved. Instead, he learned how to exist beside them. They worked together when it made sense. Some days she helped guide animals, or watch the sky for changes in weather. Other days she focused on her own space, repairing shelter, gathering food, keeping her traditions alive. The man respected these boundaries. He offered help, never control. Over time, she became more comfortable speaking. Her words were still simple, but they carried strength. She learned his language slowly, choosing the words that mattered most. He learned to listen not only to what she said, but how she said it. When she was quiet, he did not push. When she spoke, he paid attention. They shared meals sometimes, sitting a short distance apart. Food tasted different when it was shared, even without many words. It reminded her that survival did not always have to be lonely. The seasons continued to change. Spring brought soft colors and new growth. Summer tested endurance. Autumn offered calm and preparation. Winter returned with cold, but no longer felt endless. Each season now carried something she looked forward to, not because it was easy, but because she no longer faced it alone. She began teaching him things the land had taught her, which plants returned every year, where animals liked to rest, how to move without disturbing the quiet. These lessons were not written or spoken loudly. They were shown through action, patience, and repetition. He listened like someone who understood that knowledge could not be rushed. In return, he showed her small comforts, better ways to store food, simple tools that saved her strength. He explained carefully, letting her decide what to accept and what to leave behind. Nothing was forced. Everything was offered. One evening, as they sat watching the sun lower, she realized something important. She was no longer waiting. The habit was still there, deep inside her, but it no longer controlled her days. She did not stand every night searching the horizon for people who would never return. Instead, she honored them in quieter ways, through memory, through care, through living well. Her tribe lived on in her actions, in the way she respected the land,
In the way she treated others with caution and kindness.
in the way she did not forget who she was, even as the world around her changed. She shared stories with the man when she could, small ones at first, moments from her childhood, simple joys. He listened, sometimes asking gentle questions, sometimes just nodding. He never tried to correct her memories or place them into his own understanding. He let them be what they were, real. As time passed, others moved through the area, but she did not fear them the way she once had. She knew how to stay safe. She knew when to be seen and when to remain unseen. The land had given her that wisdom. She had survived waiting. She had survived being alone. Now she was living, not loudly, not with celebration, but with quiet confidence. The girl who had once been left behind had grown into a woman shaped by patience and strength. The years of waiting had not broken her. They had prepared her for something she could not have imagined as a child. Not rescue, but connection. One built slowly. As the sun set on another day, she stood on the land she loved. The wind moved through the grass. The sky shifted colors. Somewhere nearby, the man continued his work, steady and calm. She did not need to look back anymore. Her story had not ended when her tribe disappeared. It had simply taken a long, silent turn, one that led her here to a life that held both memory and possibility.